following is a paid program. Advice and opinions expressed during the program are solely that of Generations Chiropractic of Wisconsin, not WBEV or Good Karma Brands.
And welcome to Taking Care of Business. On today's show, we are visiting with Dr. Ellie from Generations Chiropractic of Wisconsin. Dr. Ellie, it's been a few weeks since we've had you on. How you doing?
I'm doing well. It's been a good month. I don't know what happened to the time.
Time has flown by, but luckily we're in winter again, apparently.
Sure, we'll go with that.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened. Apparently, we need to get the local rodents to agree that spring needs to be early so we can get into that as soon as possible. But that being said, we're glad to see you on the show. Mm-hmm. Glad to have you visit with us. My first question has to be, how is Minnie Pearl doing?
The little rugrat is doing fantastic.
Awesome. Love it.
So actually, she was a little disappointed, though. I'm not going to deny, though. This past weekend, I had a seminar up in Wausau, and it'll tie in perfectly to what we talk about later about chiropractic and that kind of thing. Right. Anyway, so I was up there visiting. They got all the snow, and so then she came back here to Beaver Dam. There was nothing, and she loves the snow. Likes
the planet. Got it. Well, we might get some more in the week here, so I guess at least somebody can enjoy it.
Makes one of us out of her and I.
Yeah, well, sometimes that's all it takes. And they always win out, the furry friends, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Before we get too far into our conversation, let's remind everybody how they can get a hold of you if they need to get a hold of you.
Yeah, so I am the owner of Generations Chiropractic. Phone number is 920-885-0641. You can easily call or text that number if you ever need to reach out to the clinic. Website is generationschiropracticwi.com. Email is also generationschiropracticwi@gmail.com. So I know they get pretty long, but, we try to make it accessible for people.
And if I remember from last time, you'll take phone calls, but text may be the easiest way to get a hold of you.
I feel like that's a quicker way you'll get a response, because then just in between other things, I can get back to you.
There you go. That's always a great way to go about things. This week, of course, is kind of a big week because of how it ends. We've got Valentine's Day coming up, and it's an important thing for people. But there's an important day coming up just before that you're highlighting. And I didn't know this was kind of an official thing, but Chiro Kids Day. Tell me about this.
Yeah, so the seminar I was at this past weekend basically is a pediatric chiropractic seminar that is really like the intro into Chiro Kids Day. And so it's like we want to get all of us chiropractors fired up about the importance of taking care of kiddos and pregnant mamas and stuff, and then filter all that energy into the clinic and all the kids that we take care of in the clinic. So it started about 10 years ago, and I'd actually heard rumor here and there that maybe it was started by my first boss, but then I got confused and lost track of stuff. Anyway, small world. Right. It's really a day that we're there to dedicate to making sure that kids are getting adjusted and helping them promote healthy choices.
Right.
So instead of just being a one-day thing, on February 13th of this year, we're actually making like a year-long theme.
Oh, okay. That's, I guess, important because when people think of chiropractic, sometimes we think it's a one and done. I go in and get one visit and leave, but this is something where it could be continued care over a length of time. So if you give it a theme, it makes it a little more fun and maybe a little less scary for the youth.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, and also we kind of are really tying it in with Valentine's Day. Like, at the clinic, we have a whole lot of goodies. Of course, they're more like heart-shaped goodies and, some of those fun things, just accessible for kids right now. It's like, hey, after you get adjusted, you can grab a thing or two. Yes, they always have their stickers they can get after their adjustment.
Stickers are nice.
Important things there. But, it's like, wait, tying it in with, here's another fun little giveaway. And thankfully for the parents, I never give out candy. So,
Okay.
They appreciate that.
You're not trying to support the dentists in the area necessarily.
Again, we're trying to promote those healthy decisions.
Right.
No, I'm not giving out carrots either. Like, that would be a little too dull. So that's why I feel like stickers are a nice compromise.
Stickers are a great compromise. I always feel bad because I go in and, like, the kids will get stickers for stuff, and I'll be like, if there's an extra sticker, Dad likes stickers. And
when I changed out the winter ones, when I changed to the winter themes, there were some that are like, these penguins are so adorable. I'm like, go for it. Like, I'm not going to say no. On the back of my phone, each month I rotate the chiropractic sticker I have.
I love it. Now, are these just a variety of stickers, or are these like themed? Like, is it a little penguin chiropractor? Or
So a lot of the stickers, like, okay, yes, I have a few right now that are like a Hello Kitty Valentine's Day type one. But normally they're all like some chiropractic saying on them. So it's like a penguin,
nice.
and it's like, I think the penguin says like, chiropractic keeps me cool, you know, like on a little ice chunk there. You know, like, you know, there's some sports ones that are, again, like a chiropractic theme, but it's not like, okay, this is a picture of a chiropractor and whatever. Just want to have fun with life.
That is awesome. And I know it's very easy for us to focus on chiropractic when it comes to adults. We usually think about adults, you know, putting out a shoulder or feeling some tension in their back, their neck, whatever. The day-and-day grind of sitting at your desk and doing your repetitive motion, needing some chiropractic therapy. But you've really focused your practice on that youth and the prenatal chiropractic, and that is an area that we don't often think about, but it's super important.
Absolutely. Yeah, I am so grateful for the entire range of people I see, but I'm like, that's really where I get the most joy when I'm taking care of people. Like, okay, it literally seems like I just get to play and have a good time with the kiddos, even when, you know, a kiddo comes in not happy. And yes, we get plenty of tantrums in the clinic. You can't deny that, because a kid's going to be a kid, and I want them to express themselves. I mean, within limits, please don't destroy my clinic, but you know.
If you, and I don't know if I asked this last time, but is there a particular thing that, you know, kids come in for that's more chronic than anything else?
Oh.
Like, I know for my kids, it's got to be like the fact that they're always in like a tablet or a phone, like head down. But
it's kind of hit or miss on some of the things of when they get to be a little bit older. I'm going to say is a lot more sports injuries. And this is actually something that I find really interesting so often. And I'm going to get on a few tangents today, and I'm going to get so passionate, so you might have to read that disclaimer a few times. But we're just rolling with it. Kids are specializing in sports so early these days. And it's like, okay, I want to be good at this, and we got to do all the travel teams, and we're doing all these practices and all these. We are starting to see a lot more of what I would say are college and professional level injuries at more of a youth level.
oh wow,
The amount of like different injuries like ACL tears, and those aren't easy things to recover from. Like, okay, you'd be thinking more end of high school, college. That's when I'm seeing more of that in some of the middle, really early high school. And I'm like, growth planes aren't even finished developing, so you can't even be having the surgery at that age yet. So now the kids are out of sports for even longer before they're able to get back. Or again, that's completely hampering what the rest of their athletic career could even be looking like, because they're specializing in performing at such high levels so early on.
Now, is that something where if they're getting regular adjustments and things, not necessarily because there's a injury and a need for it there, but just as kind of a maintenance, keeping things aligned, keeping things where it needs to be, can that help potentially prevent some of those sports injuries?
Absolutely. So often when it comes to, let's go back to ACL tears, just because that's currently on my mind. A lot of it has to do with what is even happening, pelvic alignment, and going on with the knees. So it's like, hey, that's a knee injury you think about.
Right.
But when you talk about, is the pelvis, twisted? Is it, in good alignment?
Right.
The muscles are all pulling in different ways, so it's adding different stability or lack thereof stability to the entire knee all the way down to the foot. Or you find, hey, let's look at the bottom end of foot upwards. If you just don't have good foot positioning or bad shoe wear, that can, again, lead everything back up the chain, too, into what is going on with this pelvis.
Right. I guess I hadn't really thought about it that way, but that does make sense. And I guess for a lot of these young athletes, they're training muscle groups that most kids who are just running around outside playing tag or, whatever are not focusing on. And that can change how things are developing. And
when people tend to specialize in one sport so often, which is what really is a thing these days, like growing up, it's like, hey, I played, the sport of the season, and I still was very successful in each of the sports.
Right.
But the beauty is the cross training. That actually is what allowed me to excel. And as kids tend to specialize a lot in one sport at one time now, they aren't getting some of the cross training of different muscle groups, different patterns of, okay, well, hey, throwing, a softball or a baseball really does actually help you when you're dribbling a basketball and shooting a basketball, even though those motions look completely different.
Right. Well, I guess that does make sense. I know we've had the local high school athletic and activities director, Ryan Gerber, talk to us about, because he's a big wrestling fan, and talking about how much the wrestling work translates to the football field. And it's something that I wouldn't have thought of. And, it's like, well, that's grappling, that's running and catching a ball and whatever, but still interlaced. So that does make sense. So I guess then things like, Chiro Kids and then turning that into a year-long thing, that's going to help bring a lot of awareness to what's going on to a lot of people, so that if you do have kids who are in those specialized sports and things, that gets that information in their heads.
Yeah. I mean, again, when it comes to kids who are athletes, or again, kids who are spending more time in the classroom, that doesn't even lead us into the tangents of why babies and toddlers should be getting checked. I'm sure we'll get down that rabbit hole at some moment. But it's, again, like, there's so much going on with, again, whether you're in sports or just sitting in a classroom, again, like you mentioned, hey, I'm looking down at my textbook, or, these days, the iPad, tablet, that kind of thing. But yeah, we need to be getting the body adjusted. So it's like, hey, let's mention this routineness. Like, can we create this routineness in your daily or monthly life at a minimum to maintain where we're at, so we can be excelling in good growth and development?
I have noticed my kids brought home a sheet, because now they're all at an age where in school they're using Chromebooks in school at their desk. And so seeing them come home with something that's like, oh, good etiquette for you when using your Chromebook, like get up periodically, move around, stretch your neck, stretch your arms. I thought, well, these are things we didn't hear about until we got into the working world and had to work with that sort of stuff.
You don't necessarily think about it. And again, now it's like, well, at least we're starting by getting the word out. But notice, we never even had to worry about that as kids. Like, that wasn't a thing of, okay, we got to tell you and inform you about this, because it was just, hey, we're going outside and we're playing in the yard.
Right. It's crazy how things have changed. But you guys are looking at making this a year-long thing, not just a one day. And you said you have a theme that you're planning on doing. What's this theme?
Yeah, so Chiro Kids Day is actually, again, an entire statewide thing. And this year theme is a passport theme. So, we have a little stamper, and we'll keep track of the entire sheets of paper, because we know moms will potentially lose it. Kids will be so excited of, hey, look, I got the stamp, for February and March and April. And so basically we're having these sheets of paper, and we have a stamper for when the kid comes and gets adjusted that month. And if they get, primarily the significance and importance is to be getting your adjustments. Mm-hmm. So we want them to ideally get all 12 stamps for the 12 adjustments on the one sheet of paper. And then each month there'll be a corresponding activity that they can take home, and hopefully as a family discuss things, whether it's, hey, this month's theme is a little bit more on, are you eating your fruits and vegetables? And it's like, what are some healthy fruits and vegetables? What are other ways that they can kind of get incorporated into someone's diet? Right. And I think next month is about, are you taking time to read? Again, nourishing your body from a reading and that mental standpoint. And another one is calming breaths. So they each have, a different theme that can all be beneficial, and you can get a stamp for those as well if you bring them back completed.
There you go. That's really cool. And those are a lot of little healthy tie-ins, because like you keep saying, we want healthy individuals out there, healthy little individuals, and it's more than just one thing. Eating good is not enough anymore. You got to do more than that. Taking the time to read is great, but, more. You need more.
And then this is, again, not even the tangent of, okay, we're eating fruits and vegetables, but are we even looking at the soil that they're grown in, and is the soil even having the nutrients that it did 50 years ago or whatever, or have we been stripping it out just as we've been continuing to develop the world? So I'm not going down that rabbit hole, but yes.
That could be a long tangent we could get into.
We can skip that one right there.
So anything parents should know about this program, this Chiro Kids year passport program?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to help advocate that, get your kids coming into the clinic. If you aren't familiar with chiropractic, especially for youth, this is the time, especially this month. It's I want you guys coming in, checking it out. Hey, we're throwing in a half off of a new patient exam for the youth, just because we, again, want to emphasize, get your child checked.
Right.
No, the number one importance right now is not that we want it to be Chiro Kids Day, a self-advocating thing, but more, how can we come into different platforms? I'm so glad, hey, that I was going to be doing this show, but I'm I really am just spending the entire time wanting to talk about chiropractic and kids too, as a way to get the word out.
And it is really important, because I know, at least for us as a parent, especially if you're a new parent, first child, you see them sitting a certain way or doing whatever, and you're like, oh, that's just what kids do. They're bendy, whatever. They sit awkward. They, they walk funny as they're developing. And we kind of, either we go one direction, we freak out about everything that might be a little bit different or awkward or weird, or we kind of justify it all as, well, they're still growing, they're still changing. They won't sit like that forever. They won't walk like that forever, and not realize that there might be a need to have them checked out.
Right now, I'm working with a graphic designer to create some custom posters in the clinic, and it's like we got a nice pregnancy one made up that we're gonna, put in the clinic, and a kiddo one. And I'm like, hey, let's do a baby one. And I'm like, okay, let's have it kind of in this posture. And she's looking at it. She's like, oh, like my baby was in that posture all the time. I'm like, you see, that's the thing of we commonly see that, but that's why I want us to be pointing out, like, you need to be looking for these things because, again, hey, this is what you see in your baby, and you're like, well, this is a baby. They're supposed to be cute and cuddly, right?
Right. Well, and the things we've learned about, babies and their development has changed so much from when we were little kids. Mm-hmm. I mean, not even to get into the debate of, on their back to sleep, on their front to sleep side, whatever, swaddle, don't swaddle, the whole 9 yards. And I remember when I was a kid, it was like, oh, no, you got to put them in like a little bundle. Like they're basically a ball so they can't do anything or move. And, then when we had our kids, we were like, that's what you do, right? And they're like, don't do that, constricting their body. And it was a whole thing. So, we don't know what we don't know. And we got to kind of lean on our experts who have a better understanding of all that.
And there's also that fine line of not who do you consider the expert, but yeah, like even yesterday I had a mama come in with a young one, and it's like, okay, baby's about 7 months old, not rolling over at this point, and it's like,
Okay.
I want you rolling at this point. Like, I then want you to be able to go into a sitting position, and then I'm going to want crawling, and then I'm going to want walking. Right. And the pediatrician isn't concerned yet. And I'm like, wait, there are different milestones that I want to see the body progress through. Right. So I'm like, I know I have views that may not agree with even what some pediatricians are saying and what the CDC is saying. As like, 2 years ago they changed what are the milestones of kiddos, and I'm like, I don't agree with these changes. Like, it's literally for about the brain development, why originally things were designed the way they were.
Right. And that's something we'll get into a little bit here is that connection between the brain and chiropractic. Before we do, I did have somebody ask me a question, and I was like, I don't know. I'll have to ask Dr. Ellie when she's on. Mm-hmm. Because you do also work with pregnant moms.
Absolutely.
And help with adjustments for them, because it is important that they're comfortable with everything they're going through. There's a lot of change going on in their
to say the least.
And somebody said, wait, so they work on pregnant moms. Does that mean they're doing baby adjustments while baby is in mom? And I was like, I don't think that's what's going on. I'm pretty sure everything there is kind of doing its own thing.
Well, I'm glad you got the question so that we can clarify the answer
now.
Let's do it. There we are. No, we're adjusting mom. And in turn, sometimes things will be able to, as a result, help baby find either optimal position or, allow baby the space that baby needs in there. We aren't doing anything. We aren't touching baby. We aren't doing anything like that while baby is still inside mom. But once baby gets outside of mom, I'm like, yes, we need to be still checking both mom and baby immediately after birth because it's been so much.
Right. So. It's quite a toll to go through. That's for sure. Luckily, I didn't have to worry about that. Knock on wood, that'll never be a thing I ever have to worry about, ever. But I do know that it's a physical change,
to say the least.
Yeah. I do want to remind people, of course, as the show continues, this is a paid program. The advice and opinions expressed during the program are solely that of Generations Chiropractic of Wisconsin, not necessarily WBEV or Good Karma Brands. So let's get into a smaller topic, and then we're going to go into the big one that I think we're going to really go off on a tangent on. So you have some notes here about prenatal chiropractic, postpartum chiropractic, which leads into a little what we were talking about when it comes to mom. I see one thing on here about pelvis alignment, mm-hmm. and it occurs to me how important that is because there's a canal and things got to happen, and if it's out of alignment, complications can happen.
Baby's got to get out somehow.
Right. So that makes sense. I see something here, pregnancy waddle. Talk to me about the pregnancy waddle.
Okay, so stereotypically, people are like, "Oh, I'm so pregnant," and it's like, you see their toes completely out to the side, right. And it's like, and
right.
The moms are like, "How much longer until I'm due?" That kind of thing. What I also find so interesting is, unless they're getting adjusted, their balance is pretty darn bad for pregnant mamas.
Well, I mean, imagine everything is kind of shifting weight-wise and in a short period of time.
Yes. Studies have shown that pregnant mamas are the second most prone to fall risk, only following 80-year-old people with Parkinson's.
Okay.
So, that's a huge drastic comparison there. And yet, what are we doing to be helping the pregnant mamas with either their pregnancy waddle, with their balance, with their coordination, to allow them to have good pelvic alignment, have good balance and coordination, have good stability, because think of what could happen if a mama ends up falling.
Right. Yeah, that could be bad for mom and baby. Not good all around. But then you make a note here that there is a brain and neurological impact that comes along with that prenatal and postpartum chiropractic.
Yeah, so, okay, as we got we're going to get so nerdy, and I'm going to
Let's
love it,
do it.
and I'm like, okay,
Let's do
hopefully
it.
people are like, what the heck? And I don't want people thinking that, but I'm excited.
Yeah, absolutely. And that just shows you're excited for what you do. I mean, it's a very important thing. So let's get nerdy. Tell me about it.
So sometimes you might have some of that pregnancy waddle because, again, literally pelvis and, foot, ankle, all that, whatever, pelvis just isn't in good alignment. Baby is growing so much drastically in front of you. You need to figure out how to get baby center of gravity over mama's center of gravity so that there's some coordination there. What we don't go and talk about is it's the cerebellum, so the very bottom region of the brain that is responsible for balance and coordination.
Okay.
So you're like, well, structurally, we're talking about what's happening with the pelvis, but are we talking about what kind of signals are we getting from that lower portion of the brain?
I didn't realize that helped control that, but okay. So then you're not just making sure like things are good in the pelvis area and that they've got good balance, but making sure that those communication signals can move properly?
We're making sure that those signals are turned on, that you're getting good communication. You're getting what I think of chiropractic is we have our brain and we're sending signals all the way down our spine and then all the way out to the different regions of the body. So if there's roadblocks along the pathway that we can't get from our, the balance and coordination area of the brain all the way down to the pelvis, it could be showing up in, hey, maybe my pelvis is structurally off, or maybe that's where actually people are more prone to the falling.
I guess I didn't realize that like having those joints and things on a misalignment could, but I mean, I guess they do press on nerves and things, so that could be kind of a roadblock to the communication.
Yeah.
That is so cool the way it all kind of ties together. And I'm trying to picture like now, and I apologize to my wife if she's listening. I'm sure she's not, but I'm remembering that, she's not very tall. And so when she got pregnant, it was all an outward growth. Mm-hmm. And she would have to do this, very heavy lean back while walking and moving. And I always thought that's got to be so uncomfortable. And of course, then, back pain, things like that come along with it. And I guess I never even thought at the time, like, yeah, there's probably some alignment issues that were going on, and that it compounds the pain and the discomfort.
Well, I was even then talking with a pregnant mama this morning that, again, the difference of, hey, some people are shorter and they, again, baby just goes straight out in front for what seems like miles.
They got that compressed torso going on, yeah.
And then, like the lady I was working on, she was on the taller side. So, like, she's in her third trimester and, yes, she looks pregnant, but, she's not, a mile long out in front.
Right.
And, of course, this is the only time you can ever say that someone looks a mile long.
Right.
And you also want to make sure that, yes, you really are pregnant there.
Whew, yeah.
But even we were talking about the differences of like, wait, are babies, sitting higher up or are they sitting lower? And even trying to find correlations of if it's first pregnancy, second pregnancy, et cetera. Like what I've been noticing in clinic is baby just sits so much lower in additional pregnancies. And sometimes if baby is sitting so low, it's not going to actually want to find its way back over the proper alignment of the pubic bone to eventually get out the canal.
Oh.
So, like, those are some of the things that it's like, and again, because depending on what kind of care someone has had postpartum, and postpartum care is almost even more important than the prenatal care. But everyone focuses on that prenatal care.
So what do you focus on when you're doing the postpartum stuff? Are you just trying to make sure stuff kind of shifts back where it's supposed to, or is there more to it than that?
Yeah, so some of that, definitely even a lot of some of that mental emotional piece too is huge in postpartum care because it's now like, especially if you're a first time mama, it's like, what am I doing taking care of this kid? Like, am I doing this right? Am I doing this wrong? So it's a support system. When you overall look at pregnancy, you normally have so many appointments going up throughout pregnancy and all these checks and then, okay, 2 weeks, cool, you had the kid, you're good to go. Okay, yep, 6 weeks, you can have relationships with your husband. Okay, cool. And then nothing else is ever talked about that. So pregnant mamas basically lose all sense of connection with other providers too. It's like the focus is always on baby.
Right.
So one of the number one things for me is, hey, let's really make sure mom is doing well. And then when we go back to the chiropractic portion, we want to make sure that the pelvis that has now drastically expanded is coming back and healing well and healing and creating stability that has all been so stretched out.
Right. I guess that does make a lot of sense. And I know, I know from being told, not from experience, that, there's a lot going on emotionally, chemically, everything else, in mom right after the baby. And so if she's also worrying about feeling stiffness, pain, joint issues, other stuff, all of that, that's just going to compound and add to the emotional feeling and everything else that's going on. So that kind of takes a lot off the plate when you think about it.
1 in 7. That's the number of women who will develop some kind of postpartum mood disorder.
Wow. That's a higher number than I realized. So,
and that's a number that we don't talk about because, yes, we're getting to the point of we talk more about some of that mental health component, but that is a number that we don't need in families. We don't want in families because baby is an intelligent little being, even if, no, it's not talking, walking, etc.
Right.
It can pick up on if the family dynamics are not going well, if mom is stressed, if dad is stressed, if they're unsure of what they're supposed to be doing as parents.
We think of them as little, eating and pooping machines, but there's more to it than that.
Yeah.
Which is going to lead us, I think, perfect transition point to talking about the brain. Because obviously those little brains, they're developing. There's a lot going on in those tiny little bodies and everything that's happening. And you have a whole segment here to talk about the relationship between chiropractic and the brain. So I'm going to let you just get on that nerdy soapbox and run. What do you got for me?
Yeah. So, yes, it's sometimes easier to talk about in babies because you're like, well, why would this baby need chiropractic care? But really, chiropractic in the brain is so prevalent for everyone. And it's even so much easier sometimes to see some of the presentations that I'm going to mention in a little bit in an adult because they have more weight-bearing components.
Right.
So one of the main areas of the brain is the prefrontal cortex. So this is basically kind of by the forehead area where you think about that. And that's where you talk about, hey, this is executive functioning. These are the big decision-making processes. This is the area where people are like, you don't really stop your brain development until 25 years of age, so don't do anything stupid as your brain is still developing. And then we kind of touched a little bit on a different region of the brain being the cerebellum.
Right.
Which
the
is
balance, the motor skill stuff.
Yep, the balance component. Yep. And so then we have another big region of the brain talking about the parietal lobe and the parietal region, and that does a lot more of some of that sensory processing. So that would be like what's happening. Am I getting some of the, not so much visual stimulation because that's more through the occipital lobe.
Right.
But other things like what is still even happening out in the environment, what am I even feeling and touching and is this warm? Is this cold? What am I even hearing in some of that auditory processing? Right. So all of your other senses, and we don't need to go down the rabbit hole that there's more than just 5 senses.
Right. we know.
Yes, yep. It's again, you're just intuitively know even some things too. Some of that intuitiveness is kind of residing in some of that area too. So a little bit of an overview of the brain.
Right. And
studies have literally shown that adjustments to the spine impact the prefrontal cortex of the brain. So this is what Heidi Havoc has been doing. She's a researcher out in New Zealand and one of the biggest advocates for chiropractic research, and literally showing studies that anytime you adjust the spine, you're impacting the prefrontal cortex of the brain. So think about if we get every child in school adjusted, think what could be happening to their executive function, their decision-making processes, their sense of feeling safe in their being.
I mean, that would be kind of a game changer, I would think.
And again, you just need to be educated enough to even hear and think about these possibilities because you never would have even thought, how could getting someone adjusted maybe impact the future world so much if we could be doing this all the time?
I mean, it once again makes it so interesting how that all ties in together because we don't think about how, it just doesn't.
It's not mainstream. It's not mainstream, so you don't hear it talked about.
I mean, that's okay. And so when I think about, and you really kind of touched on it in an interesting way there when you talked about, the clarity of thought and being able to make better decisions and everything because it's developing better.
It's a formative time in their lives when they're sitting in the classroom, when they're going through puberty, when they're like, I'm a teenager. Am I going to go into the workforce? Am I going to continue my studies? What is my life going to hold? I would want my children to be making good decisions as best as that you can during that time. Of course, obviously, we learn and we grow. Everyone makes bad decisions. But how can you be making better decisions by not having roadblocks in the way?
And so would you recommend kind of touching back on your passport program that you're going to have, like once a month, kind of regular, recurring, just basic alignment check? Or
And I was going to say, yep, at a minimum, that's really what I like to be saying for kids, because I'm like, hey, that is more the baseline of, hey, we're at least maintaining steadiness. Ideally, and I get adjusted a minimum of once a week. So I always want to say, hey, I'm always going to provide care to someone the frequency at which I want to be receiving care. And if I have a flare-up, if I get sick or whatever, I'm like, yeah, I'm getting adjusted more than just one time a week, because I want to get past whatever is going on. Or,
right.
hey, I tweak whatever, I'm going to utilize it a little bit more at that point. But a lot of families, and hey, I understand families are busy and stuff. We see a lot of families about every other week. So, and it's like, hey, quick, easy peasy, in and out. They look forward to. Yesterday, kids came in, they're like, oh, there's a kitchen in here. And they just, started like, again, once the kids get in the clinic, sorry, parents, your responsibility to get them out.
Right. Now, how long do these adjustments typically last? If they're coming in every other week or something, is this like, well, we're going to be here for 2 hours, or do things move a little bit quicker?
Definitely a lot quicker than that. First visit, I do normally like to say, hey, it can be up to an hour for the first visit and an hour for the second visit. Can talk through a lot more things, but also depending on the age of the kid, that kind of thing. I'm like, sometimes I'll even just do a phone history over the phone with a parent, so that, yep, let's get down to business. And when it comes to exam stuff, it is literally us playing games. So it's like, hey, kind of make it a competition of, let's stand on one foot to see how good your balance is. Or, hey, I have what I call like glowy thumbs that light up, and it's like, follow the thumbs, follow the light. What's more fun there? And so they literally think we're just playing a game the entire time.
That's really awesome, because doctor's visits can be very scary for kids.
Yeah, and it's, again, it doesn't matter the age. It's like, I want to make sure that they're on board with it. Or again, we kind of talked about last time, the race car wheels,
Right.
Again, just fun things there. But most adjustments, I want to be efficient with your time, and I want your body. Number one thing is, let's get these signals turned on. So we always say the hardest part with kiddos is assessing them throughout all their wiggles. Because if they're not going to sit on the table and lay on the table, I'm not going to force them to lay on the table. Right. I've gone and assessed, okay, I want to play in the kitchen. I'm not leaving the kitchen. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, let's see what's going on. So I'm assessing them as they're playing with this. And they're like, oh, I got to make the sandwich for so-and-so and everything there. So really, it's kind of between a combination of what's happening with what they're playing with, and then the adjustment in itself. A minute, maybe?
Right. Wow.
I was going to say, so like, I can easily get a whole family taken care of in 15 minutes, and that's even if we're not.
Right.
And it's not that it's a lack of connection, a lack of, okay, in and out, like that kind of thing, but it's, I want to honor your time, and you'll share if there's anything significant and important going on, so let's just have fun and roll with life.
Sounds like it takes more time to wrangle the kid to make it happen than to actually do it.
Oh, there are definitely plenty of times, for sure, with parents that they're like, we spend more time here playing than we actually do. But what I love is that creates a sense of community in the clinic.
That is very true. And, of course, then everybody can take a moment to say hi to Minnie Pearl. Parents, should parents at all be concerned about bringing stuff up if they have questions or concerns? Like, hey, I noticed, Billy doesn't like to raise one arm very high or something, or, seems to have issues with doing anything with, the left side of their body or whatever. Like, this is something they should definitely bring up to you, right?
There's a day I crave that chiropractors become, especially in more some of the pediatric realm, one of the first steps of where people are going to look for as tools and resources. And again, so passionate about it. Like, pediatric chiropractic is a special realm. So get care from someone who's especially trained and certified in pediatric chiropractic. Right. Okay, soapbox there. And then also, right now the main model is, hey, something doesn't seem right. I'm going to go either to the pediatrician, or I'm going to take my baby to the ER or urgent care, that kind of thing. And they're concerned, so they'll mention it there. But they don't first instinctively either, one, come to the chiropractor, or two, mention that this is going on. I often have to do a lot more of the digging. So I would rather you tell me, oh yeah, baby hasn't pooped in 3 days. Right. I mean, I'm sure I can probably feel in the pelvis that I'm like, ooh, this thing is not happy. This tummy is not happy. But like, right. The more forthcoming you are with what's going on with things,
Which mom and dad may not think initially that has any bearing on what you're doing.
Well, and there's even something to be said for, hey, sometimes, kiddo takes a fall off the jungle gym at school. They don't always tell parents about that, but the next time they come in, I'm like, did something happen? What's going on with this kiddo's neck or shoulder area? And it's not that they've been complaining about it, but I'm still even seeing it show up in the body.
Right.
So sometimes they just start to even think, oh yeah, what is kind of going on at times?
It just shows how much you can learn from just studying and looking at what they do, which is crazy. I did see you have a note here talking specifically, getting back into the brain here a little bit, about the left and right side of the brain, and obviously we're talking about the development and how chiropractic ties into all of that. But to divide it even by hemisphere, you've got more information there for us as well?
Yeah, so we talked about the different lobes already, and then we have a left side and a right side. The left side of the brain tends to do a lot more about the speech and the writing, and it's like, what I'm going to say is more the really strong classroom type work of,
Right.
okay, we want
the logical side. or
Yeah,
something like that?
absolutely.
Yeah.
There we go. I was like, I couldn't think of the word, but the right side is more of the artistic and expression, and it's the creativity and, spatial awareness and some of those fun pieces. So when we even look at, believe it or not, the brain has a specific pattern in how it develops too. Shocker there.
Go figure, right?
Right? It's like, wait, we're seeing common themes here. So naturally, the brain wants to develop the right side to the left side first. So the right side first being, that's why you look at a baby and no, they aren't doing their math skills. Like,
Right.
But it's like, how do they express themselves? They cry,
Right.
and that's what's expected of them. So anyway, it's like we just also want to look at sometimes even kiddos, babies, and this is where it becomes so much more evident in actually someone who's more weight bearing and older and standing upright, or, I guess in that case, laying on a table or whatever. You sometimes see patterns in posture, and then you can put two and two together. So, and you start to think, so there are oftentimes one side of the brain is not functioning as well as the other side of the brain.
Okay.
And a lot of people tend to not have that right side of the brain functioning as well as that left side.
So we're not getting as creative and artistic as we should be.
Not so much.
Okay.
I mean, a lot of society right now is always in that, okay, a go, go, go state. And, okay, what is this next thing we got to do? What is, some of the logic? Or how often do you take as much time to play as your kiddos?
Well, if it's me, it's quite a bit.
Okay, sorry.
For most people, yeah, I can understand where you're coming from. Now, you say you can kind of see this in how the body's, reacting and doing things. So, like, if, does that mean that they're just limping to the right because they're not getting enough over there or something?
Okay, you're over-exaggerating that, but you're right on the right track.
Okay.
So, like, literally, if some of the things we primarily look at are head tilt, shoulder posture. If you're standing with your hands at the side, is the one hand rotated a little bit out more compared to the other? Is your toe in or out? So when you put some of those indicators together, as well as pupils, that's a huge one too. So, like, there are times, whoopsie there. There are times we will, shine, again, like a flashlight in the eyes to see how the pupils are responding. And all those things are creating stories of what side of the brain is functioning better than the other side.
And then you can come up with some sort of adjustment plan that can kind of help balance that out.
So it also helps to create a little bit more of, hey, makes sense what some symptoms someone might be experiencing of. So yes, it definitely will have more of an impact. So, like, let's say, everything is naturally tilted to the right, the right high shoulder, your right hand is wanting to rotate out and your toe more off to the right side. And there's subtle cues, but, that's what I'm trained to pick up on,
Right.
that subtlety there. What we normally will find is right at more the base of the skull area. On that left side, what we'd be hoping to find is something that is misaligned there. Because as we talked about, any adjustment to the spine impacts the prefrontal cortex of the brain and impacts the brain. All those paths, as they go up throughout the spine, they crisscross over as they come to the brain. Like 85% of them crisscross. So if,
of course, we can't just be wired straight. It's
we
yeah.
got to crisscross. So it's like if you're having weakness on what would be showing up as more the right side of the brain, we'd ideally want to see is something on that left side that needs an adjustment. Of course, we're always going to find the thing that needs to be adjusted and go from there. And just because something is more predominant left or right side, well, if it's showing up on the right side, we're going to adjust what needs to be adjusted on the right side.
Right.
And that's when you throw in the other tools of wiggle your toes, or hey, can you drop your left arm down to the floor a little bit more, or some of those things that sometimes people are like, okay, you're doing these things just to trick me, and I'm like, I never want an adjustment to seem like someone is getting tricked.
Right.
But I will ask them to become a more active player in their adjustment. And how can you recruit yourself to be more actively involved in your adjustment?
And I mean, I appreciate that you are saying that, like, I'm never going to trick you into an adjustment, because we've all seen those things where it's like well, just look over there for a second, and then suddenly it's a sudden movement and a pop, and the person's like, oh, they're freaking out. And then they're like, oh, well, I guess I feel better. Like, that's not how it's supposed to go down.
No, it's supposed to be a partnership and a unity as we're getting the body adjusted. And that's why, especially a lot of the techniques I utilize, I like that it is so much more of a natural relaxation state, as opposed to, okay, we're going to just go whammo into something.
Right. Well, I imagine it's got to be a lot easier to make those adjustments if the body's relaxed and pliable as opposed to rigid and pent up.
Absolutely.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, let's say you got somebody who is having some issues where they need to be adjusted to balance out a little bit, and we're very logical, we're very focused on everything going on, we're go, 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 and we need to kind of balance things out. You're not going to suddenly do the adjustment and they're going to be like, well, now I have a whole newfound appreciation for music and poetry.
If only life were that simple.
It would be great, wouldn't it?
Oh, yes. No, I was going to say it takes repetition. It's not going to be instantly that we're going to notice all these changes. You got to start with a little bit more awareness of your own body. That's the number one thing I say when people start getting adjusted is, I want you to have more awareness of your own body.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, we've talked a little bit about what Generations Chiropractic does. We know your main focus is on that pediatric and then getting into that prenatal adjustment. But you've said that, you work with families as well.
Absolutely.
So if mom, dad, and all three kids all want to come see you and they all want to get taken care of, you're more than happy to work with the whole family.
Because we go back to that strategy that I was talking about, hey, we often see more people with that right head tilt and more showing up on being weaker on that right side, or with some of that there. Well, often that's indicators of anxiety. So often if you're very much weak on the right side, a lot more anxiety. Weak on the left side tends to be a lot more depression. I should have, some of those, those are big things.
Right.
Those, whether anxious or, depression, either of those are huge. And if parents are like that, we got to be able to get the whole family taken care of to be living their best life.
That does make a lot of sense. And I know I've heard from people who work in family therapy and whatever that, if mom and dad have a lot of stress and anxiety, that gets mirrored down to the kids and so on and so forth. But then that works in a lot of other areas. If mom and dad have good, healthy habits, that gets mirrored down in the children. If they have good coping mechanisms, that gets mirrored down. So if the whole family is getting adjusted together, it's another good lifelong habit to pick up.
We're celebrating the Chiro kids right now in the clinic, but they're only Chiro kids because of the foundations that their parents have set for them.
That makes a lot of sense.
So either whether it's parents or, again, maybe teachers are the ones who can be advocating, but who do these kids get to see all the time? Those are their advocates. Kids also, they don't know, and they don't have the resources to know. Nor can they just show up and say, I want an adjustment in the clinic. There's,
Right.
Liability there. So
it does make sense. Well, and you know what? I'm going to say we need to be an advocate right now for letting people know how to get a hold of you, because unfortunately we've already reached the end of our show time. So remind everybody again, how do we get a hold of Dr. Ellie?
yes. So clinic phone number is 920-885-0641. I have a website that some people like to just be able to schedule new patient visits on there.
Mm-hmm.
That's generationschiropracticwi.com. I have not been very active on Instagram or Facebook. My goal is to be getting that back up there because, again, it's my role to help on the education track. If
Right.
I'm not educating, who really is?
Well, there you go. And, of course, they can also email you. You said it was generationschiropracticwi@gmail.com.
You got it.
Perfect. So I want to thank you so much for taking the time to come out and talk to us again, Dr. Ellie. We could have gone for at least another hour, I think.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
We'll get you
That'll be
back
next
on
month,
again.
next month.
Absolutely. This has been a paid program. The advice and opinions expressed during the program are solely that of Generations Chiropractic of Wisconsin, not necessarily WBEV or Good Karma Brands.